to this tutorial in which I'm going to be looking at a couple of the basic tools and techniques and processes that are required to build a very simple low polygon character in Maya. So the first thing we're going to want to do is open up our copy of Maya and change from the standard perspective view to the full window view just by clicking on the button highlighted. Next we're going to make sure that we're actually in the modelling options by clicking on the drop down menu and making sure modelling is selected. Then we're going to make sure that we're on the polygons tab, and the first thing we're going to do is make a very simple polygon cube. The tools that we're going to be using to manipulate this cube into the character are highlighted here. We've got the extrude face tool and the split polygon tool. We're also going to be using the split edge ring tool, which is located in the edit polygons options. So now that we've got everything more or less set up, we're going to need a reference images to work with. This is an image I quickly made. What we're going to need to do is actually split these two drawings into two so that we have one drawing of the character facing us from the front and one drawing of the character from the side. And we're actually going to be able to import these images into Maya, and to do this we're going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and browse the location of that image. The way I like working, and this you may find it different, that you prefer something else, but I actually like changing the attributes of my image plane by going to View, Image Plane Attributes, and selecting Image Plane 1, and dropping the alpha gain to something like 0.4. This is really handy, I think, as it makes the image slightly transparent and I can actually see the vertices on the other side of the image plane. What we're going to need to do is do the exact same process for the side view. And then what we're going to do is actually we're going to get rid of the projected planes in the perspective view by going to Show and deselecting cameras, so that we've got the nice reference images in the orthographic planes, but the perspective is just the polygon cube itself, which just makes it a little bit cleaner and easier to see what's going on. So the way that we're going to manipulate this cube is actually a number of ways. If you were to hold the cursor over the cube and hold down the right mouse button, you can see that you've got a number of ways to select different components of the polygons. For example, you can select the vertices, which are the corners, the edges and the faces, and the main two that we're going to be using are the vertices and the faces for the purpose of this tutorial. And the ways where you're going to manipulate them are by these three tools highlighted here. It's the Move tool, the Rotate tool and the Scale tool, all of which are pretty self-explanatory. So now we're just about ready to actually start modelling the character. If we go into vertex mode, vertex selection mode, we can basically shift the vertices and make sure that they match up with roughly where the hip area is for our reference images. So we're going to want to scale the cube down a little bit so it's more of a rectangle, taper in the bottom end so that it follows where the thighs are beginning, and basically the entire point of having this reference images is that the lines that we're creating roughly follow the lines that we can see in the reference image. So now we've got the hip areas sort of started and established, we're going to want to generate some new geometry to build the rest of the character with. And the way that we're going to do this for this tutorial is by using the extrude face tool as highlighted here. Basically what we want to do is select the top face of the hip area, and we're going to extrude that up, and when you click on the extrude tool you get a little directional tool which you can drag that new face up or down with, and basically you want to create a new segment for the character which acts as its stomach. Then we're going to go back into vertices mode, and again we're going to change the vertices, move those around so they follow the lines of the reference image behind, and we're just going to keep on repeating this process until we've got a rough torso built. As you can see, there's the torso. This is all done just by extruding the faces and moving the vertices around. So now we're ready to make the head. What we're going to do is we're going to select the very top face and extrude that upwards, only this time we're actually going to slightly rotate these top four new vertices that we've got so that they follow the sort of invisible line from the top of the chin down to the back of the neck. And then what we're going to do is select that top face again and extrude it all the way up to roughly where the top of the head would be. Then what we're going to do is actually stop extruding from the top. We're actually going to extrude the two side faces. As you can see here in this picture, we're just extruding the front one forward and the back one backwards. And then we want to go back into vertex mode and be able to shift these up and down so that they fit the rough outline in the reference image that we've got highlighted here. If you quickly look at the front viewport, you can see that the head is actually very narrow, and we're going to need to generate some new vertices on the side of the head that will allow us to pull that upward and actually give it a bit of depth. And one way that we're going to be able to do that is using the split edge ring tool. that's in the Edit Polygons options for anyone that's managed to forget. It's basically left click and hold on one of the vertical lines on the head, and as you hold it you see the projected image ring, split ring, sorry. Simply move that up and down until you've got it into a position roughly like what we can see here. Next, what we're going to want to be able to do is, we've got this problem whenever Maya has edges that just seem to end. This seems to generate some issues, so we're going to need to fix that somehow. And the way that we're going to fix that is by using the split polygon tool. Basically, what we want to make this edge ring do is actually follow a complete ring around the head as opposed to what's projected there at the moment. And so what we're going to need to do is take this split polygon tool and click on the two, basically connect those two edges up together, and press enter when we're done, and obviously we've got a new edge created. But now what we're going to need to do is get rid of these edges that are here, highlighted in this sort of smile shape that we've got, and also bear in mind there's the edge on the opposite side of the head that we can't quite see from this angle. So make sure that all three edges are selected, go to Edit Polygons, and click on the Delete Edge tool, and what this does, this just removes it. It means that we've got a nice clean loop around the head. Obviously there's the problem that we have at the back of the head, where we need to repeat this process. Feel free to do this. It was merely highlighted just so that you're aware of the options that are there when it comes to modelling. Next, we're going to want to be able to extrude the arm out a little bit, but because we're selecting two faces, because these two faces correspond to where the arm extrudes, as we can see in the front reference image, we're going to make sure that we go to Polygons, Tools options, and have the Keep Faces Together option selected. And this just means that they don't fly off at different angles and make us way slow to try and bring them both back together. So there we can see them extruded. What we want to be able to do is go to the Vertices Selection tool once more, move these around, and what I've actually done this time, the top face that we originally selected, that's actually become what I think is called the deltoid muscle. That's the sort of very top of where your shoulder joins your actual arm. But the actual arm itself is actually going to be extruded from that bottom face, so you're going to need to rotate the vertices so that they're facing downwards. And then we're just going to go back to that process that we did the rest of the torso and the head for, selecting the face, extruding it, and manipulating the vertices so they fit the rough outlines that we've got in our reference images there. So now we're about ready to do the legs. What we want to be able to do is use the Split Edge Ring tool, and we're going to split the model straight down the middle. What this does, instead of having a single face at the bottom of the character, now we've got two. So we want to select the face on the same side that we've got the arm as, and extrude that down. And again, it's the exact same principles that we did the torso and the arms for. We extrude, we go back to the Vertex Selection tool, we move those around so that they correspond with the lines that we can see in the reference images. So now we should have a rough leg and an arm, although what we want to be able to do is somehow build another leg and another arm without having to go through all that effort of doing it again. Now, it might not seem that much effort now, but when you're thinking about doing this with some really high poly characters, you know, that could take you potentially hours and hours, and the way that Maya allows you to skip doing this is by mirroring it. So the first thing we're going to need to do is go to the face selection method and select all of the faces on the opposite side of the body, and what we're going to do is just simply delete those by pressing the delete key. So now we've got a basic half of the character, like a hollow shell. We're going to select that hollow shell, go to Polygons, Mirror Geometry, but this time we're going to click that little blue box which is highlighted there. This brings up the options, and what we're going to make sure we need two things selected are the Merge with the Original and the Merge Vertices. Make sure both of those are selected. I'm also going to make sure that we're mirroring the right direction. So we can see that the way that I've built the character, it needs to be mirrored in the positive X direction. This is quite easy to work out if you've done it the opposite way around. So click Apply, and as we can see, we've got the character now, both with arms and legs on both sides. What we're going to need to do is, you'll probably need to do a little bit of cleanup with the vertices to make sure he's not become too wide or too thin from the mirror. If you've done it properly, of course, he should be straight down the middle, but there's always some issues that seem to pop up with mirroring sometimes. Here's a quick render of what the character looks like. So it is very simple, but bear in mind it wasn't too long ago that games such as Half-Life 1 and Quake 2 were using models which weren't that far off what we can see here. A lot of their details actually came from the textures that they used. So thank you very much for listening and watching the tutorial. I hope you've managed to learn something. What I plan to do in my next tutorial is actually take this very basic character shape and look at generating a lot more detail in that in the form of muscle definition, adding some fingers and arms and toes and all this sort, and also looking at modelling a basic face for the character. So once again, thank you, and hopefully I'll see you for my next tutorial.